It's FYE purchase day, guys. Check this sumbitch out. Revocations, Chaos of Forms. So you guys know what's coming tomorrow. But not today. Today we're going to talk about another new release that was also released today. Something that some people have been looking forward to. Other people were kind of like, wow, really, that's coming? It sort of came out of nowhere for me as well. And I really overlooked, I suppose, any sort of date or anything like this for this album. And that is The Age of Hell by Chimaira. Now, Chimaira has been a band that's been on my radar, then off my radar, then on my radar, then off my radar for quite some time. Especially in the beginning part of the 2000s, they were on my radar whenever they first were really getting started. And then they sort of just faded a little bit. And then with Resurrection, it sort of resurrected my interest in this band, which then quickly faded in the years after. So it's been kind of a roller coaster ride of whether or not I can accept this band and they become a longtime favorite of mine, either that or they're just going to be sort of one of the average bands that sort of is a name that I recognize, a name that I can speak to people, but not something that I'm going to highly recommend. Now, The Age of Hell is an album that is, well, one that I'm on the fence with. And you know that whenever this happens, you can expect something with a lot of descriptors and with a lot of just random similes and metaphors in it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and hopefully we can all keep up. And I'm including myself because my brain is a very fast-paced environment, and my mouth sometimes not so much. This is an album where there's a lot of styles clash. Now, for those of you who are TNA fans, you're going to laugh at that, but fuck off. But this is an album that definitely embraces a lot of different styles and does a lot of different things. There are elements of this album that are kind of progressive. There are elements to this album that are extremely deathcore, and it's very apparent. It's not something that they hide. And there are also elements of this album that are just straight up downright metalcore or heavy metal. This is a band that is able to embrace different ideas. There's even parts of songs, either that or just introductions, that remind me a little bit more of an industrial side of the band that resembles a Fear Factory type output. And what this does is do two things. One is good and one is bad. The first one is that it gives an album like this a ton of variety, so it puts something on the table for just about everybody. However, the negative of this is that if it doesn't really flow with a lot of fluency, then it's something that can become a large distraction, either that or really, lower the score. This actually suffers a little bit more from the latter than it does the former. Now, with multiple listens, this is an album that starts to really mend itself together and become a little bit more cohesive. You start to understand a little bit more of what Chimaira was aiming to accomplish by making this record in the way in which they did. However, the first listen, you're going to be very out of focus. You're going to feel as though you're a schizo patient, and these are the different voices inside of your head, the different bodies of your out-of-body experience that are communicating with you in these different ways. Ways in which you perhaps have never heard before, or ways that you have heard before, but never has thought to associate with a band like Chimaira. Now, with multiple listens, the cohesiveness, the bond, you start to realize that this is exactly what they're sort of going for. The Age of Hell, consider the title alone, is something where there are many different ideas of this hell, this idea of hell. And the songs kind of fit in with that theme, even though there's no connectivity, there's no ideal of a concept album with this here. There are just multiple little ideas that are being thrusted about perhaps layers of hell, different types of hell, different ways in which hell exists both here in the United States of America or around the world, and also in the traditional context of hell, as in hot place, way underground, where Satan pokes you with a prod and sticks pineapples up your ass. So this album actually does a very, very good job of constructing what would be a multiple layer hell ride. And that's something that I enjoy about this record. It's not something that's going to blow me off the map. It's not something where I'm going to praise this album to the very high heavens. However, I will say I do respect what Chimaira did with this record. I think that there are a couple tracks on here that flow extremely well. I think the second half of this album is the strength right there after Beyond the Grave. Is really where the strength kicks in. There's a little bit of incohesiveness with a couple tracks where it's a little bit more deathcore. You can tell that they're really aiming for these to be crowd pleasers whenever they perform live. However, aside from that, it's pretty damn good. This is an album that kind of took me off guard by its release, and also kind of took me off guard whenever I listened to it. The first time I did, I was thinking, whatever. This is just another album. But now that I've listened to it a few times, I've warmed to it a bit, and that's usually a good sign. I'm going to have to give this album a solid 8. I think that this has a lot to offer to many different people. I think that there's going to be some hardcore fans that may be a little disappointed with this record because of the multiple styles that are being incorporated. They might think that it's a little excessive and that the band should just go back to their very deathcore, their very metalcore, their very heavy metal roots. But I like the experimentation. I like the fact that they tweak the formula a little bit. And after multiple listens, this album actually becomes a little bit less of a fence minder and becomes more of a solid affair that you can actually understand. So good job to the boys in Chimaira. Cover Killer Nation saying, I think this is like the first time I ever told you guys what review was coming next, aside from it being a discography review. So stay tuned. You know it's coming.